trying to get to know you much better. Don't matter how much time it will take, but there's something you're trying to hide. There's something you're keeping inside. But I'm trying to get to know you much better. Don't matter how much time it will take.
Hello. My name is Marquetta DeVille, and I am your host of I'm That Girl podcast. And we are in season 2. Woo! Welcome to season 2, I'm That Girl podcast. And this season, we will highlight women doing amazing things in their respective field, but they're going to come on and tell us about their It Girl Era. And I know many of you are like, Marquetta, what is a It Girl Era? Let's get right into it. Again, my name is Marquetta DeVille. I'm the owner of DeVille Realty Group, my husband and I. So the sponsor of my podcast is, of course, DeVille Realty Group and DeVille Solar Management. So today we are going to talk about my personal It Girl Era and how I got started. So as many of you guys know, DeVille Realty Group is a well-known real estate company in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm also a Las Vegas, Nevada native. And with that being said, majority of my life, I was the behind the scenes girl. I would get things done. I would make things look cute, but I never wanted to be in the forefront. But not until a few years ago did I discover why I never wanted to be in the forefront. I was always okay with being Marquetta, the girl's mom, the kid's nanny, Greg's wife, the co-owner of DeVille Realty Group, the cousin of such and such, the niece of such and such, and I was okay with that until a few years ago. I went to a conference and I did not even know my worth when I went to the conference. But like most of my life, majority of the people around me saw something great that lived within me, but I didn't see it. But I lived, I put a smile on, I held my head up high, but not until I discovered that when I was a child, there were things that took place that kind of made me standoffish, wanting to be in the background, not wanting the attention. Um, Early in childhood education, I was super excited about going to school, but there were challenges in my educational path starting off. And not so much that I didn't know how to do, but it was the fear and the intimidation of the people around me that made me stand back and not really gleam in the light that I have been given by God. Hello, somebody. How many of you out there are like that? There's that one thing that that still stunts your productivity and your glow, that you don't get out there and just be who God created you to be. And that's me. So again, 3 years ago, I went to this conference. I had been nominated as one of the top women to watch. I went to the conference. I was very intentional about the classes I wanted to sit in. Well, while sitting in these classes, I was challenged, okay, to really just talk about who I was. And I didn't know who I was, which really gave me this gut wrenching feeling. And when I sat there and I tried to come up with some things real quick, I was used to saying, my husband and I own DeVille Realty Group. My husband's this and my husband's that, and my kids are this and my grandkids are this, and my sister is this and my brother is this and my mom is this and my family is this. But who was Marquetta? Who are you? Is what the instructor asks in a breakout session. And so what did I do? I took that same information that I had given the first time she asked me. I was determined to come back to this session and say, oh, I know who I am. And thank God for a God fearing instructor, a God fearing panelist, a God fearing speaker, because God spoke through her and told her that I was much more than what I had said. And so day two, I come back and I'm like, I'm Marquetta DeVille. I'm the owner of DeVille Realty Group, and we're the largest Black-owned real estate company in the state of Nevada. But still, I had not said who was Marquetta DeVille because I didn't know myself. All I knew is there were certain things that I had an underlying fear of: speaking in public, speaking to crowds I wasn't familiar with. I just wanted to let somebody else shine, and do what I did best, but let somebody else be the face of what I did best. And so day two, she said, no, God is showing me you're so much more than who you're saying you are right now. Because how many of y'all, maybe I'm a party of one, but I'll be that party of one today so that somebody else gets their breakthrough, right? So, party of one, I said, I don't really know who I am. I know who my company is. I know who my husband is. I know who my children are. I know who my grandchildren are. But who was I? So I was stuck wearing this mask. How many of you guys out there today wear a mask to cover up your insecurity? So I knew before I left this conference that my mask was coming off. I didn't need anybody or anything to push me, because at that moment I had already had a conversation with God that I was going to discover Marquetta DeVille. And so I went back to my room and I wrote down some things after session two. And I was kind of reluctant about going back to session three, right? I was like, nah, she might embarrass me. I went to this session three or two out of the three sessions that I get at this conference. How do I go back a third time? And even some people I had came with were like, nah, they're gonna talk about the same thing. You need to go to a different session. You wrote down three sessions. But the Spirit of God told me I needed to be back in that same session, right? So I talked to my husband about it, and yeah, babe, maybe you should get some other information. You came all the way from Las Vegas to New York to sit in the same class. Maybe you should see what some of the other ladies have to speak about in their breakout sessions. But deep down inside, God was telling me to go back, go back, go back. And this time come with some substance, right? So I went back to the session. I was bold, right? I knew what I wanted to be. I knew what I had the desire to be. I knew what so many people had said I was that I didn't even see, right? And so I went back to the class, and before I even began to speak, the instructor said, class, this is Marquetta DeVille. Her and her husband are the owners of DeVille Realty Group. They're the largest Black-owned real estate company in the state of Nevada. And I was stuck at that point, right? Because she had already told everybody who I thought I was. But this time she wanted to know who God said that I am. And so I told her, can you come back to me? And as she went around the class, it began to fall into my spirit exactly who I was and who I was going to be when I returned to Las Vegas, Nevada. And so I dug deep, and I had to dig real fast because these sessions were only 1 hour, but the instructor, Dr. Stacy Grant, was coming back to me, right? She was going to come back, and she really wanted to know who I was. because God was already talking to her about who I was. So I dug deep and I began to write down in my notepad that I'm Marquetta DeVille. That was the first thing I wrote. Number two, I'm the owner, co-owner of DeVille Realty Group. I have 5 children and 3 grandchildren. I'm the oldest of the generation of my generation on my mom's side. So I got so many cousins and nieces and nephews who are looking up to me to be great. So at that point I knew I had to be great. Something changed that day in New York City, right? In New Jersey. I'm sorry. No, in New York. In New York, something changed that day. And I said, okay, I got to leave a legacy. And as I began to think about it, God just began to speak into my life privately. And I began to cry and I began to write some things down. And as I wrote them down, I said, okay, God, Dr. Grant is offering this class. I said, but I don't think that the people around me are going to see the value in this class. So if it was meant for me to get more from Dr. Grant, then I need you to provide a resource. And so I took the paperwork home, right? I took the paperwork, and when she came back to me, I said, Dr. Grant, I'm Marquetta DeVille. I'm an author. I'm a podcast host. I'm the co-owner of DeVille Realty Group, the largest Black-owned real estate company in the state of Nevada. I'm a motivational speaker. Hello, motivational speaker. This is the same little Black girl that went to school from one mountain to the other mountain out of the neighborhood that she grew up in because she was bused all the way across to the next mountain. I lived as far east, or I'm sorry, as far north as Las Vegas went in the 80s. And I went to school as far south, past Votech. I grew up on the west side of Las Vegas, Nevada. Today is the historic west side, y'all. But I went to school so far south, it was probably the last thing that Nevada had. And I didn't look like the other kids. I was taller than most of the other kids. I didn't speak like the other kids. And so knowing what I wasn't as a kid, I forgot about what I was. I was great because I had cousins and my sisters and everybody coming up after me, and they all looked up to me, and I was there for them all, but I didn't really know the power that I possessed, and I allowed my insecurities for majority of my life. Many of you would never know, but it's a fact. Majority of my life, I allowed my insecurities to stunt my growth. Fast forward back, I was emotional from New York all the way back to Las Vegas. And I was excited at the same time because finally I knew who I was. And on my plane ride home, I prayed to God. I said, God, I want to be exactly who you said I am. And there's things I have been writing on my vision board that hadn't come to pass. And I was ready to give up on some of those things. And when I tell you, God acted expeditiously on my behalf, right? I said, God, I need a resource that's going to fund who I am. And if you do it, then I'm making a promise to you today. This not gonna be that if you save me today from drinking, I ain't gonna never drink. I wasn't making that kind of promise to God. I was making a promise that I had to keep. Nevertheless, I got back to Las Vegas within 3 days. I knew how to get the funds that I needed to get off the ground and to discover MJD, Marquetta Jenkins DeVille, the wealth architect. And so once I knew who I was, I knew what I had a passion for. I had a passion to help people. I had a passion to educate people. So I was going to forget about the insecurities of what I wasn't, and I was going to move forward in who I was. So right away, soon as I got that funding, as soon as the funding came in, excuse me, I said, okay, God, well, I really could pay down my credit cards and I could do this to my house and I could put this on my daughter's college fund and I could do this to my car. And God pumped my brakes right away. He said, oh, that's not what you said. What you said was, if I provided a resource, you were going to walk in who I created you to be. And so Las Vegas, Nevada, uh, all Facebook, podcast listeners, Instagram, wherever you are listening from, that is when my It Girl era began. My It Girl era was right at that moment. Right away, I booked a venue. I didn't even know what I was booking it for, but I booked a venue out for 6 months. And I said, well, one of my favorite meals is brunch. So I'm going to have a brunch. And right away, I booked a caterer. Still didn't know who was coming. I was scared, shaking in my boots because insecurities tried to kick in. But hey, I'm that same girl that used to fight back in Valley View Park for my sisters, my cousins, and anybody else in the neighborhood. No. So I had to get in a fight with my insecurities and let them know, hey, you're not going to win. This is a battle for me and God. So right away, I found my foundational scripture, Proverbs 13:22. I was going to teach anybody who wanted to listen how to use wealth, how to use equity to create wealth. Proverbs 13:22 says, a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. So right away, I got my scripture. I got what I was going to do, where I was going to do it, and what I was going to feed the people, right? Now I just needed the people, and I was scared. But I quickly discovered that there was a group of people sitting out there waiting for me to launch my It Girl Era. And I did just that. I kicked off my first brunch. It sold out. So I brought planned next month. And as next month began to sell out before the first brunch had already happened, I was in awe with God. I said, oh God, we on the roll now. We about to get it. So but before the second brunch happened, I began to write my first book. And I'm working with my publisher. And when I'm talking to the publisher, I said, my birthday is next month. I want this book to launch on my birthday. I said, I'm giving birth on my birthday to this book. And so she was like, girl, I was like, don't worry about it. We're not worrying about money. We're not worrying about time. I'm ready to go full fledged. The other thing is, I was just a few credits shy from my college degree. I finished my college degree in May, right after I launched my first book. And when I launched the secret plays to creating wealth through equity, which you can get on Amazon, the secret plays to the wealth mindset playbook to getting your first home by Marquetta DeVille is on Amazon, and you can get your copy. But God didn't stop at the book. Like I said, in May, I graduated and I got my degree. I finished my degree, which I had been putting off for years. And right after I got my degree, I became a licensed minister at my church, which was also on my vision board. So now I got the brunch series going. I became a college graduate. I became a licensed minister. I wrote my first book, all within the matter of the first 5 months of the following year after discovering me. And I began to walk in my It Girl era, right? So from the brunch, I began to get speaking engagements. And this is the same girl that was scared to get on radio when nobody could even see me speak. I was nervous. I'm talking about, I felt like I had the stomach flu the day before, the day of, and the day after, each and every time my husband would invite me to radio. But now I'm getting speaking engagements. And I was nervous, but God reminded me, oh no, we walking in your it girl era. So let's go. And what did I do? I accepted those speaking engagements. And then here comes what was so amazing about this. I told God if I could do six brunches, I would continue the brunches. And in continuing the brunches, I would turn it into a conference. So what happened? Life started to happen. I'm not going to front. Life did happen in between, right? So after those 6 brunches, things transpired in my life. It was a lot for me to even pick my head up off the pillow, because part of my it girl era, my dad was there to see it all, right? And I'm a daddy's girl by default. I'm a daddy's girl. Many of you who know me, you know I'm a daddy's girl. I'm going to war about my father. I've always been like that from a little girl. But I lost my dad, and I felt like I lost a piece of me at that time. And so I wanted to grieve, but God reminded me, oh, we walking in this era. It's okay. You may have today, you may have tomorrow. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to get it together, because we got to get back into your era. And I took those couple of months, and it seems like everything I tried to do would not happen for me, right? It it was so overbearing. I didn't know what to do, right? I had lost the person, but then I took the person that meant a lot of my world to me. But then I took joy in the fact that he was able to see his girl walk. He was able to see his girl get married, graduate from college, graduate from high school, have my first child, write my first book. He had seen me do it, right? So I had no choice but to walk, to get up, get back on this journey, stop allowing life to life on me, and take it by the horns and let life know that you can't have me no more. I'm walking in my it girl era. So as I began to talk to my husband and tell him I had promised God that I would turn the wealth mindset brunch series into a conference. He was like, well, let's do it. We'll make it a men and women's conference. So this past year, I recently partnered with my husband. We had the wealth mindset conference, one of the most talked about conferences to happen this year. And if you missed it this year, you have to get ready, right? Get ready for next year, because we are in full-fledged planning mode, and we are excited about what the Wealth Mindset Conference Las Vegas is bringing to 2024. So that is my story, you guys. That is Marquetta DeVille, the host of I'm That Girl podcast, walking in my it girl era. And so as the season continues, you will hear from many other women who are doing phenomenal things in their respective fields. I'm talking about ladies right here in Las Vegas, Nevada, who have discovered who they are and accepted their it girl era, and they're walking in it. So I am so super excited. Make sure you subscribe to I'm That Girl podcast on YouTube so that you can follow. Please invite a friend. You can also find me on all social media platforms at Marquetta DeVille, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. I am Marquetta D on Twitter. I am so super excited about this season that is coming before us. Make sure you tune in. Don't miss an episode. But if you happen to miss an episode, you can always watch the replay. So just let me know in the comments that you are watching the replay. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And make sure you're back next week because many of you know I am a real estate agent. My husband and I own DeVille Realty Group, and we are in National Home Ownership Month. So next week, I will be tapping in to let you know not only about the Las Vegas housing market, but also about the housing market in general, because real estate is booming. As many of you may think differently, make sure you tune in next week as we discuss the real estate market, because we all need a piece of the American pie. And like I said, my foundational scripture is Proverbs 13:22. A wise man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you next week on I'm That Girl podcast.